My name is Ava. I'm 33 years old, and until last week, I thought I had my life perfectly under control. As a dedicated legal aid lawyer in Chicago, I never expected a call from my mother to completely upend my world. Her words, delivered with a chilling lack of warmth, still echo in my mind. "You have 48 hours to get your stuff out. That house is your sister's now, the house my grandmother left specifically to me in her will." I felt the floor drop out from under me, but instead of arguing, I just stayed silent. They had no idea what was coming. Before I tell you what happened when my sister tried to walk into that house, do me a favor and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if you want to see exactly how I handled this ultimate betrayal. To truly grasp why this act cut so deeply, you need to understand about the house and my bond with my grandmother. The Craftsman Bungalow sits on a tree-lined street in a quiet Chicago suburb, with its inviting front porch and dark green trim that my grandmother Isabel and I painted together one summer when I was 12. Built in 1920, it still has the original, beautifully worn hardwood floors, a sweeping staircase I used to slide down as a kid, and a kitchen with a wide bay window that looks out over a garden filled with hydrangeas that bloom in vibrant blues and purples every summer. But beyond its physical charm, that house was the only place I ever felt truly at home. While my parents were preoccupied with their relentless climb up the corporate ladder, it was my grandmother who raised me. Every summer and almost every weekend was spent in that house, where the warm scent of her baking bread would fill every room, and the sound of her genuine laughter would echo down the halls. "A woman needs to know how to stand on her own 2 feet, Ava," Grandma Isabel would say, her voice firm but kind, as she taught me how to fix a running toilet. I can still picture her hands marked by years of hard work, but so steady and strong, guiding mine as she showed me how to use a wrench and a screwdriver, tools most girls my age had never even seen. By the time I was 15, I could patch a hole in drywall, change a car tire, and cook a complete Thanksgiving meal all by myself. The garden was her personal sanctuary, and she generously made it ours. We'd spend countless hours together, my knees covered in dirt right next to hers, as she patiently explained the difference between a rose that needed full sun and a fern that thrived in the shade. "Life always finds a way to come back, Ava," she'd tell me, her gardening advice always serving as a deeper life lesson that molded the person I am today. "You just have to give it the right conditions to grow." When I got my acceptance letter to law school, she transformed the sun-drenched back porch into a perfect study space for me. I spent months preparing for the bar exam in that room, surrounded by her thriving plants, drawing strength from her quiet presence during the most grueling moments of my education. She saw a fire in me that my own parents either ignored or tried to extinguish. She believed in me when no one else did. My parents, Eleanor and Robert, were cut from a different cloth. For them, success was a simple equation of promotions, bonuses, and material possessions. My mother, with her impeccably coiffed hair and a social calendar full of country club events, had my entire life planned out before I could even spell my own name. My father, emotionally distant and perpetually critical, treated parenting like a business acquisition, where the only thing that mattered was the final return on investment. Their disappointment was a tangible thing in the room when I announced I was choosing to work in legal aid instead of pursuing a lucrative corporate law career. All that expensive education, wasted on charity cases, my mother had remarked with a sigh. Then there was my sister, Chloe, 4 years my junior and infinitely more compliant. She attended the business school they selected, married the man they approved of, and never once dared to question their authority. While I was fighting for every scrap of my independence, she comfortably settled into their control, effortlessly becoming the perfect daughter they had always wanted. When Grandma Isabel passed away 3 years ago, her will was crystal clear. The house was mine. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office as the will was read aloud, a wave of both profound grief and immense gratitude washing over me. My grandmother knew exactly what that house signified to me. She knew I was the one who had spent my weekends helping her with repairs and upkeep in her final years, when her arthritis made it a painful struggle for her to even climb the stairs. My parents were visibly annoyed by the outcome, but the will was ironclad. My grandmother, ever the pragmatist, had worked closely with her attorney to ensure every document was flawlessly executed, leaving zero room for argument or misinterpretation. The house was unequivocally mine, along with a handwritten letter that I still keep in my desk drawer. In it, she wrote, "This house has been a safe harbor for 4 generations of strong women. Now, my dear Ava, it will be your harbor as you continue to forge your own incredible path." Despite owning the house outright, I kept my apartment closer to downtown Chicago, where my office is. The commute from the suburbs would have been exhausting, and my demanding caseload as a legal aid attorney often required me to work late into the night. Still, I made sure to visit regularly. I maintained the property meticulously, paid all the taxes and insurance on time, and kept it exactly as my grandmother would have wanted it. I had long-term plans to eventually move in, maybe when I started a family of my own, or when my career allowed for a more flexible schedule. I never once entertained the thought of selling it, even though I received frequent, generous offers from developers who saw the lot as a prime piece of real estate. That house wasn't just a structure of wood and nails to me, it was the physical embodiment of the only unconditional love I had ever known. It was home, in the truest and purest sense of the word. My parents could never comprehend this deep attachment. "It's just a house, Ava," my mother would say dismissively whenever I mentioned a renovation project or an update on the garden. "You could sell it and buy something far more practical and modern." To them, everything had a price tag, a market value that could be quantified. The concept that something could be priceless simply because of the memories and emotions tied to it was completely foreign to their pragmatic, transactional worldview. I had worked my way through college and law school, taking on significant student loans and juggling multiple part-time jobs, while my sister's education was fully funded by our parents without a second thought. When I graduated with honors, they showed up for the ceremony but left before it was even over, citing a pressing business dinner. When I won my first major case, securing housing rights for a group of low-income families facing illegal eviction, my father called it small-time stuff compared to the multi-million-dollar corporate mergers Chloe was helping to facilitate at her finance firm. The chasm between us widened with each passing year, and holiday gatherings became tense exercises in self-restraint as I bit my tongue through their thinly veiled criticisms and endless, unflattering comparisons. Still, I maintained contact because I believed that's what family was supposed to do, or so I thought. I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined they would stoop this low. I never believed they would dare to try and take the one thing in the world that mattered most to me. But as I was about to find out, there are depths to family betrayal that I had not yet begun to fathom. It was a Friday evening when my phone rang. I had just walked in the door from court, completely drained after a grueling week spent fighting for a family on the brink of foreclosure. Seeing my mother's name flash on the screen, I was tempted to let it go to voicemail, but a lingering sense of familial duty made me answer. "Ava, we need to talk about the house," my mother began, foregoing any sort of greeting. Her voice had that clipped, all-business tone she always used when a decision had already been made, and my input was just a procedural formality. "What about it?" I asked, kicking off my heels and sinking onto my sofa, completely unaware that my world was about to be turned upside down. "Your sister needs somewhere to live. As you know, her divorce was finalized last month, and she can't afford to keep their marital home. Your father and I have decided that she and Lily will move into your grandmother's house." I sat bolt upright, my exhaustion instantly vanishing, replaced by a hot surge of adrenaline. "What do you mean you've decided?" "That house is my house. Grandma left it to me." "Don't be so difficult, Ava," my mother snapped, her voice sharp. "You don't even live there. It's just sitting empty while your sister and your niece are practically homeless. Family helps family. I'm not being difficult, Mom. I'm stating a legal fact. The house is mine. I pay the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep. I can't just give it away. We're not asking you to give it away, she countered, her voice rising in pitch. We're telling you that the family needs to reallocate its assets based on who has the greatest need. Chloe has a child to think about. What do you have? A career that keeps you so busy you can't even be bothered to use the house. The implication that my life was somehow less significant because I wasn't a mother was a familiar wound, but it stung no less. I took a deep, steadying breath, trying to keep my composure. Has Chloe even looked for apartments? Has she considered downsizing? There have to be other options besides her taking my house. Your father has already spoken with Mr. Peterson, she said, naming our family's longtime attorney. He says there are provisions in your grandmother's will we can challenge, provisions about the property needing to be used as a primary residence, which you clearly aren't doing. This was an outright lie. I knew that will by heart. I had read it dozens of times. There were no such conditions. My grandmother had left me the house, period. Mom, that's not true, and you know it. The will is clear. The house is mine, with no strings attached. Don't you dare tell me what's true and what isn't, Ava. Her voice had reached that shrill, piercing pitch that always signaled the end of any rational discussion. You have always been selfish, always putting yourself before the needs of this family. Your sister needs that house for her and Lily. You have 48 hours to get any personal items you want out of there. After that, Chloe is moving in. Before I could form a response, I heard my father's voice in the background. He must have been listening in on another line. Ava, this is not up for debate. His authoritative tone, the one that had silenced any argument from me as a child, came through loud and clear. The decision has been made. Chloe needs the house more than you do. This is about doing what is right for the family as a whole. But Dad, this isn't legal. You can't just decide to give away my property. We can, and we have, he replied coldly. Mr. Peterson is drawing up the papers as we speak. If you fight us on this, you will only be hurting your sister and your niece. Is that really what you want? To deprive a little girl of a stable home just because you're clinging to some sentimental attachment? The emotional manipulation was so blatant, so transparent, yet it was still potent enough to make me second-guess myself for a fleeting moment. Was I being selfish? No, I realized with a sudden clarity. This wasn't about selfishness. This was about justice. It was about honoring my grandmother's final wishes. It was about finally standing up for myself in a family that had spent a lifetime trying to make me feel small. I need to speak with Mr. Peterson directly, I said, my voice steady, trying to buy myself some time. He's away for the weekend, my father replied, far too quickly. The papers will be ready on Monday, but Chloe needs to move in before then. Your mother already gave you the timeline. 48 hours, Ava. Be reasonable for once in your life. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in stunned disbelief. A few minutes later, it buzzed with a text from Chloe. I know this is probably hard for you, but I really, really need this right now. Lily and I have nowhere else to go. Mom and Dad said you never use the house anyway. I promise we'll take great care of it. I can even help you move your stuff this weekend if you want. The feigned sympathy, combined with the audacious assumption that this was a done deal, made my blood boil. I immediately tried calling Mr. Peterson, but just as my father had claimed, his office was closed for the weekend. I tried his cell, but it went directly to his voicemail. Either he was genuinely unreachable, or, more likely, he had been instructed by my parents not to speak with me. I sat in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the legal briefs and case files of other people's problems, feeling more profoundly alone than I ever had in my life. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest, not just because they were trying to steal my house, but because of the casual ease with which they dismissed me, my rights and my feelings, prioritizing Chloe over me yet again. As the initial shock began to fade, a different emotion took its place: steely determination. I was a lawyer, for heaven's sake. I specialized in housing rights. If anyone on this planet should know how to protect their own property, it was me. And in that moment, I made a silent vow. I would not go quietly. I would not let them erase my grandmother's legacy. The clock was ticking, 48 hours, but they had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with. As a lawyer specializing in housing rights, I knew with absolute certainty that what my family was attempting was flagrantly illegal. There was no ambiguity, no obscure legal loophole they could possibly exploit. The house was mine, lock, stock, and barrel, regardless of my parents' fabrications about non-existent residency clauses in the will. I also knew that family disputes could become incredibly messy, spiraling out of control when emotions and manipulation tactics were the primary tools of negotiation. I spent the rest of that night at my kitchen table, my laptop glowing in the dark, meticulously reviewing every single document related to the house: the deed, the will, years of property tax records, insurance policies, everything. I created a new digital folder, methodically organizing each file chronologically, essentially building the case file I would use if this ended up in court. At midnight, I drafted an email to Maria, a trusted colleague who specialized in estate law. I laid out the entire situation and asked for her professional assessment. By 1 a.m., her reply came in, confirming what I already knew. My parents had no legal leg to stand on. She also issued a stark warning. If they managed to gain physical access to the house and move Chloe in, it could escalate into a complicated squatters' rights scenario, potentially requiring a formal, lengthy eviction process to resolve. "Don't let them get a foot in the door, Ava," she wrote, literally. I nodded to myself, a concrete plan already forming in my mind. By 2 a.m., I had a complete strategy mapped out, including a minute-by-minute timeline for the next 48 hours. I had to move with speed and precision, and most importantly, without tipping my hand to my family. The very first thing Saturday morning, I called a locksmith who advertised 24/7 emergency services. I explained that I was the homeowner and required an immediate full replacement of all locks due to pressing security concerns. I scheduled the appointment for 9 a.m., offering to pay a premium for the urgent weekend service. Next, I contacted a security company a former client had recommended. They specialized in the rapid deployment of comprehensive home security systems, including cameras with remote monitoring. They confirmed they could have a basic system installed and operational by Saturday afternoon. I then called my friend David, a police officer in the suburb where my grandmother's house was located. I explained the situation, and he agreed without hesitation to be present on Sunday evening, which was when I anticipated my family would attempt to move Chloe in. He said he'd bring a colleague and the necessary property documentation forms to legally intervene if trespassing occurred. With the immediate physical security of the house addressed, I shifted my focus to the legal front. I drafted a formal cease and desist letter addressed to my parents and Chloe, clearly stating my ownership of the property and my unequivocal refusal to allow them to take possession. I also prepared an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order, ready to be filed first thing Monday morning if the situation escalated. By Saturday morning, I was driving to my grandmother's house, a cold, focused determination coursing through my veins. I had packed several large storage bins in my car, intending to collect the most precious, irreplaceable family heirlooms. While I had no intention of surrendering the house, I wasn't about to risk my grandmother's photo albums, her modest jewelry, or her handwritten recipe books falling into the hands of people who so clearly disrespected her wishes. As I pulled into the familiar driveway, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. No one from my family was there. The house stood peacefully in the spring sunshine, the garden just beginning to stir with new life as it did every year. For a moment, a profound grief hit me again, not just for my grandmother, but for the illusion of the family I thought I had. The locksmith arrived promptly at 9 a.m., and within an hour, every external door had a new high-security lock. For the front door, I chose a keypad entry system, which would allow me to grant or revoke access remotely and maintain a digital log of every entry. The side and back doors received new, heavy-duty deadbolts with keys that only I would possess. The security team arrived just as the locksmith was finishing up. They worked with quiet efficiency, installing cameras at all entry points and in the main living areas. The system was programmed to send instant alerts to my phone if any motion was detected, and I could view live feeds from anywhere. While the security team worked, I moved through the house, carefully packing the items I couldn't bear to lose. My grandmother's wedding band and the simple pearl necklace she wore on special occasions. The worn photo albums that chronicled 4 generations of our family's history. The hand-stitched quilt she had made for me when I was born. Her treasured collection of first edition novels that we used to read together on rainy afternoons. The small wooden box containing every letter I had ever written to her from college and law school. Each object I touched was a tangible reminder of her wisdom, her kindness, and her unwavering belief in me. "Never let anyone dim your light, Ava," she used to tell me. "Stand your ground when you know you're in the right." I could almost hear her voice in the quiet house, encouraging me, validating my decision to fight for what was rightfully mine. By late afternoon, the security system was fully installed and operational. I had the mobile apps configured on my phone and had tested every feature. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was Chloe. "Hey, I was thinking of coming by tomorrow morning to start measuring for curtains and planning furniture placement. Would 9 o'clock work for you?" Her tone was so casual, as if she were asking to meet for coffee, not planning the takeover of my house. "I actually won't be there tomorrow," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. "And I think we need to have a serious discussion before any plans are made. What's there to discuss? Mom and Dad already told you what's happening. I need the house, you don't. It's that simple." The sheer entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. "Nothing about this is simple, Chloe. The house is legally mine. Grandma left it to me for a reason. Only because you were always her favorite," she snapped, the thin facade of sisterly concern finally cracking to reveal the bitter resentment that had been festering for years. "You always got special treatment from her, and now you're going to deny my daughter a home out of pure spite. Real mature, Ava. This isn't about favoritism or spite," I said firmly. "It's about respecting Grandma's final wishes and the legal reality of the situation. You can't just take someone's house because you want it." "Watch me," she retorted, and the line went dead. I stood in the entryway of my grandmother's house and took a long, deep breath. The conversation had only hardened my resolve. This house was more than just property. It was a symbol of the love and guidance my grandmother had given me, a physical testament to her belief in my strength and independence. I would not let it be stolen from me through emotional manipulation and bullying. As I locked up the house with the new keys, a strange sense of calm settled over me. For years, I had desperately tried to earn my parents' approval, accepting their constant criticism and dismissal as something I somehow deserved. But this, their latest and most egregious act, had clarified everything. Their behavior was not my fault, and I no longer had to accept it. The 48-hour deadline was still ticking, but now I was ready. Let them come, I thought. Let them try. I had the law on my side, and for the first time in my life, I was going to stand up to my family without backing down. Saturday evening, my phone started buzzing with a relentless stream of notifications. Chloe had begun sending a series of texts, complete with photos of furniture and decor she was considering for her new house. Each message felt like a deliberate jab, a calculated move to prove that my silence was being interpreted as consent, thinking of painting the living room a sage green. "What do you think? Do you still have Grandma's old dining table? Lily and I won't need something that big, but maybe we can put it in storage. Mom said you might want the china cabinet. Let me know by tonight, otherwise we'll probably just sell it." The audacity was staggering. They were discussing selling my grandmother's heirlooms, pieces of our family's history, as if they already owned them. I didn't respond to a single message. Engaging would only legitimize their delusion that this was a negotiation. Around 8 p.m., my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. On the third try, I answered. "Why aren't you answering your sister's texts?" she demanded, her voice tight with irritation. "Hello to you too, Mom," I said, keeping my tone perfectly even. "I don't have anything to say to Chloe about the house. Don't be so childish, Ava. She needs your help planning the move. The very least you could do is cooperate. There isn't going to be a move, Mom. The house is mine. I have no intention of giving it to Chloe." There was a beat of stunned silence, and then my mother scoffed. "So, you're really going to fight us on this, after everything we've done for you?" The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. What exactly had they done for me? "I'm not fighting anyone," I replied. "I'm stating a fact. The house is legally and rightfully mine. I understand Chloe is in a tough spot, but taking my home isn't the solution." "Your home?" she repeated with disdain. "You talk as if you built it yourself. That house has been in our family for generations. It should go to the person who needs it most right now, and that person is your sister. That's not how property ownership works, Mom. Grandma left the house to me in her will. That was her decision, and she made it for her own reasons. Because she didn't know Chloe would end up divorced with a child to support," my mother nearly shouted into the phone. "Circumstances change, Ava. Families adapt. Why are you being so unbelievably selfish?" There it was again. Selfish. The word they had wielded against me my entire life, anytime I dared to have a need or a boundary of my own. But it didn't work this time. "I'm not having this conversation anymore," I said firmly. "The house is not available for Chloe. She needs to find another solution." "Your father wants to talk to you," my mother said, and before I could protest, my father's booming voice was on the line. "Ava, listen to me," he began, using that condescending, authoritative tone. "I've spoken with Mr. Peterson, and we've found precedent for contesting the will based on your grandmother's declining mental state in her final months." My blood ran cold with rage. "That is an absolute disgusting lie, and you know it. Grandma was as sharp as a tack until the very end. Any doctor, any of her bridge partners, anyone she volunteered with at the library would confirm that. You're threatening to slander her memory just to get what you want. That's a new low, even for you." "I'm not threatening anything," he said coldly. "I'm simply telling you what will happen if you continue to be unreasonable. Fighting this in court will be expensive, time-consuming, and deeply embarrassing for everyone. Is that really what you want? To drag this family through a public legal battle that will destroy what's left of our relationships?" "You seem to be confusing me with someone who is intimidated by legal proceedings, Dad," I replied, my lawyer instincts fully engaged. "I know exactly what would happen if you tried to contest the will on those grounds, and it wouldn't go the way you think. But you're right about one thing. This situation is destroying relationships." Sunday morning brought a fresh assault. An email from my father arrived with an attached document he had titled Family Agreement for Temporary Reassignment of Property. It was an amateurish, legally nonsensical document, but it was presented with the unshakable confidence of a man who was used to his decrees being treated as law. By midday, my extended family had been mobilized. My mother's sister called to lecture me about doing the right thing for Chloe and Lily. My father's brother texted to express his disappointment in my lack of family solidarity. It was a full-scale psychological campaign designed to pressure me into submission. What they failed to grasp was that every call, every text, every manipulative ploy only strengthened my resolve. At 3 p.m., my apartment buzzer rang. I checked the security camera feed on my phone and saw them, my parents and Chloe, standing on the front steps, and Chloe was holding Lily's hand. They were using my 5-year-old niece as an emotional prop. I buzzed them up, steeling myself for the confrontation. "We wanted to talk in person," my mother began as they entered, "to clear the air before tomorrow." "There's nothing to clear," I said, not offering them a seat. "The house is not an option for Chloe." "Aunt Ava, are we going to live in the house with the big tire swing?" Lily asked, her innocent voice clearly coached to tug at my heartstrings. Before I could answer, Chloe jumped in. "Yes, sweetie. The house that great-grandma Isabel wanted us to have." The blatant lie spoken in front of her own child made my blood boil. "Lily, honey, would you like to watch a movie on my tablet while the grown-ups talk?" I handed her my device with an animated movie already queued up, and she happily skipped over to the couch, effectively neutralizing their primary weapon. "That was unnecessary," Chloe hissed. "What's unnecessary is using your daughter as an emotional shield," I countered. "It's not going to work. None of it is. The guilt trips, the threats, the family pressure. The house is mine. I will not be bullied into giving it up." "We are not bullying you," my father insisted, pulling a document from his folder. "We are trying to find a reasonable solution to a family crisis. Chloe has nowhere to go." "That simply isn't true," I said calmly. "She has options. Apartments, smaller rental houses. This is Chicago, not a deserted island. There is housing available in every price range." "Your selfishness is just unbelievable," Chloe spat. "You don't even use the house. You just hoard it like some kind of shrine because you were always Grandma's favorite." Meanwhile, my daughter and I could actually make it a real home again. My father slid a paper across my coffee table. "This is a formal notice of our intent to challenge the will. Mr. Peterson has already begun the paperwork." I glanced at the document. It was meaningless, with no official letterhead, no attorney's signature. A bluff. "This isn't worth the paper it's printed on," I said, sliding it back to him. "And if Mr. Peterson is truly involved in this scheme, he should know better. Attempting to defraud me of my legal property could have serious professional consequences for him." "This isn't over," my father said, his face turning a dark shade of red as he gathered his useless papers. "Be prepared for what comes next." The house was secure, my legal documents were in order, and my backup was in place. Tomorrow would be the climax of this family drama, and for once in my life, I wasn't going to be the one to bend. Monday morning was clear and bright, a jarring contrast to the storm brewing within my family. As I got ready, I checked the security camera feeds on my phone. All was quiet at the house. I knew it wouldn't last. I had taken the day off work, explaining to my supervisor that I was handling a contentious family property dispute. By 9 a.m., I was parked down the street from my grandmother's house, in a spot with a clear view of the driveway but where my car wouldn't be easily seen. On the passenger seat was a meticulously organized folder containing the deed, the will, the letter from my grandmother's attorney confirming my unconditional ownership, and most importantly, the temporary restraining order I had filed and had granted on an emergency basis, first thing that morning. My police officer friend, David, had texted to confirm he and his partner would be on standby from 10 a.m. At 9:30 a.m., my phone buzzed, motion detected at the front of the house. I opened the app and watched my father pacing the perimeter, peering into windows and testing the handles of the doors. Finding them all locked, he made an angry phone call. 20 minutes later, a large moving truck rumbled down the street, followed by my mother's SUV with Chloe in the passenger seat. My father met them, and I could see a heated discussion break out. Chloe stormed up to the front door, tried her old key, and looked utterly bewildered when it didn't turn in the lock. This was it. I sent a text to David, "It's time," and started my car. I drove the short distance and parked my car directly in the driveway, blocking the moving truck. 3 faces turned towards me, their expressions a mixture of surprise and fury. "Finally decided to show up and do the right thing?" my mother asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm here to make sure the right thing happens," I replied calmly, just as David's patrol car pulled up to the curb. He and his partner, Officer Rivera, got out and approached our group. "What's going on here?" my father demanded, puffing out his chest. Ms. Warren asked us to be present while she addresses a potential trespassing situation, David explained professionally. Trespassing? Chloe scoffed. We're her family. Family or not, this property belongs to Ms. Ava Warren, Officer Rivera stated, glancing at the documentation I'd provided him earlier, and she has not granted permission for anyone to enter. This is ridiculous, my mother sputtered. This is a family matter. A family matter that involves an attempt to illegally seize my property, I clarified, my voice steady, which is why I've also filed for and received a temporary restraining order preventing any of you from entering the premises. I handed a copy to each of them, watching their faces shift from arrogance to disbelief as they read the official court document. You got a restraining order against your own family? Chloe shrieked. Have you lost your mind? On the contrary, I replied. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. This house is mine. Grandma left it to me. You have no legal right to be here. My father, who had been reading the order with narrowed eyes, looked up. This won't stand. I called Mr. Peterson this morning. He's preparing the paperwork to challenge the will. Is he? I asked, pulling out my phone. That's fascinating, because I also spoke with Mr. Peterson an hour ago. Would you like to hear what he had to say? I pressed play on the recording I had legally made of our conversation. Mr. Peterson's voice was clear and unambiguous. For the record, Mr. Harrison, I have never advised the Warren family that there were grounds to contest Isabel Warren's will. The will is legally sound, and Ava Warren is the sole and rightful owner of the property at 42 Maple Street. I have not prepared, nor will I prepare, any documents challenging this fact. If Robert or Eleanor Warren have claimed otherwise, they have grossly misrepresented my professional opinion. The color drained from my father's face. My mother stared at him, bewildered, while Chloe stood frozen, the full reality of the situation finally crashing down on her. You lied? My mother whispered to my father. He was being overly cautious. My father blustered, but his voice had lost all its authority. We can find other attorneys. No reputable attorney would take this case, I interjected. The will is ironclad. Grandma was of sound mind, and the document was perfectly executed. It's over. So what now? Chloe asked, tears welling in her eyes. Lily and I have nowhere to go. We gave up our apartment. All our things are in that truck. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was a fire of their own making. You have options, Chloe, I said, my voice softening slightly. There are short-term rentals. I can even give you a list, but this house is not one of those options. After everything we've done for you, my mother began, falling back on her tired refrain, this is how you repay us? By humiliating us in front of the police. They are not homeless because of me, I stated firmly, looking directly at my parents. They are in this position because of you. You promised them something that was never yours to give. You created this entire mess, not me. My father, ever the pragmatist when cornered, finally seemed to accept defeat. Let's go, he said curtly to my mother and Chloe. We'll figure something else out. As they turned to leave, Officer Rivera spoke up. For clarity, the restraining order prohibits you from entering this property. Any attempt to do so will result in immediate arrest. We understand, my father said stiffly. As they drove away, the moving truck following them after I moved my car, I felt a complex wave of relief, sadness, and anger. But overriding it all was a profound sense of peace. I had stood my ground. I had protected my grandmother's legacy, and I had finally broken free from the toxic cycle of my family's control. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotional fallout. My phone was a constant source of incoming fire, with messages ranging from my Aunt Dorothy's scathing voicemails about how my grandmother would be ashamed, to my cousin Jake's supportive texts asking for my side of the story. Chloe oscillated wildly between furious accusations, "You've ruined my life," and desperate pleas. "Please, Ava, just for a few months." I stood firm, offering to help her find an apartment and even contribute to the security deposit, but the house remained non-negotiable. Through a mutual friend, I learned that Chloe and Lily had moved into my parents' spacious guest house. The homelessness crisis was, as I suspected, a complete fabrication. A week later, an unexpected email from Mr. Peterson landed in my inbox. In the interest of professional ethics, he wrote, I feel obligated to share these communications with you. Attached were emails showing that my parents had been consulting with attorneys to find a way to take the house from me, not since Chloe's divorce, but for 3 years, starting immediately after my grandmother's funeral. This wasn't an impulsive act of desperation for Chloe. It was a premeditated, long-term scheme to seize control of an asset they felt was rightfully theirs. This revelation, while painful, was also strangely liberating. It was the final, irrefutable proof that their behavior had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own need for control. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma. She gave me the vocabulary for my experiences: golden child, scapegoat, narcissistic family system. Your grandmother saw your worth, she told me, and she tried to give you something that couldn't be taken away. By defending her gift, you're honoring the healthy love she represented. Those words became my mantra. As the weeks turned into months, I decided to sell my downtown apartment and move into the house permanently. The long commute was a small price to pay for the peace I felt within those walls. I reclaimed the space as my own, painting the rooms in warm, bright colors and tending to the garden my grandmother had loved. I started a small scholarship fund in her name, the Isabel Warren Resilience Scholarship, for law students from difficult family backgrounds. 6 months after the confrontation, I received a handwritten letter from Chloe. She had found an apartment she could afford and was in therapy herself. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she wrote. Just letting you know that you standing up for yourself made me finally look at things differently. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a crack of light in the darkness. My parents, however, remained a lost cause. After a final threatening legal letter from my father, to which I responded with the evidence of his years-long scheme, he went silent. My mother occasionally sends holiday cards pretending nothing ever happened. I keep them in a box, a sad monument to a relationship that probably never truly was. 6 months to the day after the confrontation, I hosted a garden party. My grandmother's hydrangeas were in full, glorious bloom. As I watched my chosen family, my friends, my supportive colleagues, my kind neighbors, laughing among the flowers, I felt her presence so strongly. Later, as the last guest left, I sat alone on the porch swing. The grief for the family I had lost was still there, a dull ache in my heart. But alongside it was a profound sense of peace. In fighting for what was rightfully mine, I had discovered a strength I never knew I had. Sometimes the family we choose is more real than the one we are born into. My grandmother taught me to stand tall, and in honoring her home, I finally learned to honor myself. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of you? Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey of setting boundaries and finding strength, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to say no to those who don't respect you. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to protect what matters most. End of story.